when I'm teaching, sort of my mental map is, 90% content and learning and 10% like fun and entertainment. And I'm almost trying to just like flip the script here where it's my focus is to try to be entertaining and enjoyable and fun. But within that, embedded in that is some learning, some ways like, okay, this is a clever way to think about data or analytics or AI.
Hey nerds, Monica here. Welcome to the Data Podcast for Nerds, where we get to talk to amazing professionals and ask them all about how they use data to solve the world's problems, to highlight all of the wonderful data careers that are available out there. And we also always include some fun bits because we're all nerds here and we love to have fun. So today with us, we have Evan Wimpey. How are you today, Evan?
Hey, Monica, fantastic. What a fun intro. What a fun podcast to be on.
I'm glad you think so. Thank you so much.
I reserve the right to change my mind in a few minutes here, but it seems fun right now.
Absolutely. That is so fair. That is very fair. So we typically start off our episodes by understanding people's background stories, or as we like to call it, origin stories. And so can you please let us know about your background and how you got to where you are today in your career?
Sure. Yeah, I love the origin story. I feel like a super villain, which maybe is telling. Maybe the default would be to feel like a superhero. I'm a villain, even in my own story. So my background is in finance and economics. I have an undergrad from Georgia Tech and a master's in economics from East Carolina. Went into the Marine Corps as a finance officer, which is like the least stereotypical Marine you can be. So I wasn't kicking down doors. I was sitting in a nice air conditioned office, pushing money around on computers. Got out, went to work for a bank. You get out of the military and the hope is you don't have to work such long and intense hours, and you go to a bank and you work even longer and intenser hours. So I didn't want to do that so much. But my background was in sort of quantitative economics. So as mathy as you can be in economics, I think a lot of econometrics, a lot of regression. And I was at the bank. It was a big bank, a successful bank that didn't have a need to be super innovated in like the operations space, clearing a bunch of foreign transaction exchanges where I was sitting. But it was sort of appealing to think, we could use data to solve this. We're throwing people and time at this. And if we were a little bit smarter about the way we approach things and we use data to help, people be more efficient in this, then that was sort of an appealing thing for me. And at the time, my spouse was going through a master's in analytics, and that was also appealing. And I really didn't like the idea of her knowing so much more than me. So I actually followed her to the exact same master's program, got a master's in analytics. That was at NC State. And then that was 2018. And then I've been at my current firm since then. That's Elder Research, and we're a consulting firm. So I was a data scientist there for about 3 years, three plus years. And so that's working with clients doing analytics as a service. They've got the data, get to come in, ask a bunch of questions, try to learn about what they do, try to help them use their data to do something better, make some better decision. I now fill sort of a mixed role there where I'm doing some business development, some project management, some analytics delivery, and some analytics comedy, which if we're into the just for fun bit already, this is my just most for fun thing that I can do. And I can talk in more detail about how, that's people talk about not a linear career path. There's not really any path that really goes to data science comedian. But here I am. And so I now still serve as the director of analytics strategy, doing a lot for this consulting firm. And I also have I've written a data science joke book, and I perform data science comedy on the side for folks who think, for nerds like the nerds that are listening to this that hopefully think data nerd jokes are funny.
Absolutely. Such a fun story. Before we officially get into the nerd bits, although I do want to start that now, I do have a question. Having a background in economics, was that easier, do you think, to transition into analytics? How was that experience for you?
Yeah, maybe it's sort of my optimistic tendencies, or maybe it's just human tendencies to, you look in a cloud, you can find the dinosaur in the cloud every single time, no matter what. So no matter what somebody's background is, my head immediately jumps to, well, that translates very well to analytics. You could use that. You were a teacher, that would be really great in analytics. You were a chemical engineer, that would be great in analytics. But I do think that about economics for sure. And I think sort of the economics mindset, certainly some of the like base skills and math and statistics that you use in economics, you need in data and analytics as well. But I think one of the key things of sort of thinking like an economist is just explicitly considering and focusing on trade-offs. And every decision that you have to make as part of some analysis or as part of making some decision comes with some trade-off. And so maybe in the most explicit sense in analytics, if you build a classification model, you're going to get some wrong. Do you set your threshold very high, and so you don't get many false positives, or do you set it really low so you don't get any false negatives? Okay, we have to think about where that trade-off is. But I think anytime you're analyzing data, the way you treat missing values, the way you pipe data in, the way you clean data, the way you approach a model, trying to be explicit and upfront about the way you think about trade-offs, I think is something that economics trains you for pretty well.
Okay, interesting. So with that, what types of data problems do you like to solve the most, either in economics or on the data analytics side? Because there's so much overlap there. It's so interesting.
Yeah. So one of the things that drew me to the company that I'm at now, Elder Research, is the data and AI space is gotten so that it's probably not saturated yet, but it's gotten much bigger and much more saturated. And if you have a well-defined problem that a lot of people have solved before, there tend to be folks that specialize in that and that do that type of problem solving. So say forecasting demand. If you sell some tangible good and you sell it at multiple places, then you want to be able to forecast how many folks are going to buy your thing. And there are if we just Google that right now, there are 19 different vendors. And so there's nothing wrong with that type of problem, and optimizing those types of problems for some specific use case is awesome. But where I personally enjoy things is a place where maybe you don't have that transaction history, or you're not trying to do you're not trying necessarily to forecast demand. You're trying to forecast, what would the impact be of this exogenous shock on this demand. And so I'm using a sort of an economics example, but I think the broader point remains, and sort of where the firm that I am now, sort of where our focus is when you've got sort of the uniqueness problem, where this is something that we've got some data on it, but it's not clear enough, that this would not make for a good Kaggle competition. We can't just throw a model at this data and use the output, but think very carefully about the technical aspects of what data we're using and what, sort of results we're serving from a model or some analytics thing, but also really thinking about sort of the contextual aspects. So who's going to use this? What do they do with this? What do they do when it breaks? What are they going to say when it's wrong? And that's a very, very broad answer for what types of problems that I tend to work on. It's not necessarily a particular industry or a particular data type or a particular model type. It is It is when creativity is required, which maybe you could argue creativity is always required. So, but I think when it's a more novel problem, and when it's not a research problem, when it's an applied problem, somebody needs to actually use this to do a decision. We don't care about the theoretical, this is theoretically guaranteed to give you the right. Well, is it usable? Is it going to help me make a decision that's going to improve some outcome?
I love that. So you basically like to solve problems that have never been solved before.
I like to work on problems that have never been solved before. No, I would like
you don't know what you're solving.
Yeah, I would like to solve some of them, but sometimes they're really hard.
That does sound very superhero-ish of you.
Maybe it is a hero origin story then.
So then, when you're approaching those types of problems that have never been solved before, how much more difficult and how much more work is involved when you're trying to do that research? You just said there's more research involved, but there's no Stack Overflow that you can go to or anything like that, right? So what are your resources there?
Yeah, that's a very thoughtful question. It's not maybe that there's not resources that can help you address it. I think it is being careful, and maybe I'll walk this back in a moment as I start to ramble on this, but I think it's also about being skeptical. So maybe here's this thing that can really help you forecast, this type of model is great for, global forecast and providing prediction intervals. Well, it's not exactly the right use case for this, or our data doesn't fit these assumptions exactly, or we're not going to use the outputs in the exact same way. So what can I take from this? What sort of maybe lessons or what technical underpinnings can I take from this and try to apply in my situation, but to be conscientious about where there's differences, where this is not the same cookie cutter problem. Not that there's really any cookie cutter problem in data science, but
right.
But being careful not to plug in a predefined solution and think, great, this is giving me what I expect, and I'm interpreting this output in the right way. Just being skeptical and sort of understanding what the limitations are for the things that you're building.
Well, you definitely don't like boring things. That is for sure.
I like interesting things, but I like boring. Are you a baseball fan?
I am not.
Then I like boring
any
things.
Sports fan,
There we go. Baseball, I think I'll defend it till the day I die, but it's a rap for being the boring sport, and I like it, and I don't care.
Okay.
So I just try to be a little contrarian here. I like interesting things. I like the boring things too.
Boring can be fun, relaxing. There you go.
Yeah.
Well, let's get into officially our fun bits section. So you obviously don't like boring things unless you're trying to relax. You love to have fun, and you consider yourself to be a data comedian. Let's do 2 origin stories.
Yeah, the analytics one, that was the villain origin story. Now this is the superhero. The comedy gets to be the superhero. Okay. This was, I might butcher the dates. That's okay. The internet can go back and check me later. 2021, we were a Slack shop. We use Slack for internal communications, and just sort of our fun check this out channel. I had a colleague post a competition to a consortium for undergraduate statistics education. Is that spelled CAUSE? Whatever the acronym is, it's CAUSE. But it's a big statistics teachers conference for undergraduate teachers, and they're having a competition for their all virtual, early COVID times. This this workshop and this conference, they were doing a competition for any type of like fun bits. So it was songs, drawings. This is before large language models and stable diffusion models were like ubiquitous, and you could just use that to put anything in. But one of the categories was jokes. We're accepting jokes. Okay. So I thought this seems fun. I like to think of myself as a funny guy. My wife rolls her eyes all the time, so it must be good for something. So I wrote a joke. I submitted it. A couple months later, it was notified that I won, which is good. I got to go to the conference and tell the joke and watch a whole bunch of people roll their eyes virtually at me. But what really launched this origin story is I got a $50 check for winning the competition, making me a professional data comedian. And that's, if you're tired of somebody like an office mate that tells corny jokes, and then they get that title, they can say they're a professional comedian. I was just wearing it out. I was telling the joke to everybody. My poor office mates heard it 1,000 times. Went nonstop, wrote a bunch of derivatives from that and a bunch of other statistics jokes. And at some point, have a collection here, and it's okay. It's starting to get a sizable collection. So how many do you need? And a little bit of research shows if you want to write a joke book, you either need 1,001 jokes or 101 jokes, or maybe 10,001 or 10. I was 1,001 is unachievable. It's too far, but 101 data analytics jokes is starting to look achievable. So I ended up getting to that threshold and publishing a book earlier this year. Predictable jokes. It's 101. It meets the magic number. And in writing this, we had some clients at my consulting firm at Elder Research that do sort of team building activities with their data science team, their data science shop. And so that tends to be like half and half, like fun team building activities. Like they have a math magician that comes, or they have like some entertainment that comes. And they also do some like training and actual learning. And so my consulting firm, the Elder Research, was hired on to do some of the actual training. But then they learned about the comedy efforts. I said, "What? Can you do some jokes too?" So I did some stand-up data science comedy, and it went over pretty well. And so now I've performed at a couple of conferences, very niche analytics type conferences. Machine Learning Week, which was in Vegas earlier this year, and then the International Symposium on Forecasting, which was in June in Charlottesville. And so this is the thing that folks seem to enjoy. The nerd humor, the nerd fun is taking off, and I'm sort of shocked. It's sort of beyond my wildest dreams to think like, okay, people, there's some demand for this, to hark back to my economics days.
That's so fun. So is your book called 101 Data Jokes, or
It is. Some folks probably listen. I don't know if people watch, but it's called Predictable Jokes, 101 data-driven laughs for those in analytics, machine learning, and AI. Yes.
Oh, amazing. Please tell me with a 101, you have a joke in there related to Dalmatians.
No, but I'm working on a sequel now. So let me take a note here. A Dalmatian joke.
That'll require you for another 101 jokes, though.
Yeah,
so.
I can't just think of one more. I need 101 more. Great. It does have the award-winning joke that launched the origin story that I'm happy to tell for the 999th time.
Yes, please.
Great. So did you hear about the Bayesian who built a model to tell her when she needs to go to the dentist?
I have not.
Well, it said she didn't need to go for 6 more months, but that's probably because she just had a week prior. But that was the award winner. Can you believe it? There's 100 more that are probably worse than that one.
I now understand the eye rolls.
That is the intent of all of the jokes. Is very corny, very
I absolutely
data science. It. But if you're a good Bayesian, there's a handful of Bayesian jokes in there.
Do you have chapters?
I do have chapters. Yes, they are loosely organized. There's no reason to have chapters, but in my research, books have chapters. I'll make chapters into these.
I said that as a joke. It literally has chapters. Okay, what are these chapters?
Let's see. Chapter 1 is working in data.
Okay.
Chapter 2 is home sweet home, around the house. Chapter 3 is food and beverage, travel and leisure, international affairs, and so on and so forth.
And so, okay. So there's a lot of chapters.
Whatever the topic of the joke is goes fitting into that chapter.
Got it. I love that. What is the food? Is there one from food and beverage on the top of your head that you can share?
There is. This isn't in its version is not in the book, but this has been a mainstay for the handful of stand-up acts that I've done. But it's data scientist went to the bar, sat down, was super excited because there were a lot of other data science friends that came in to sit at the bar. And so we're sitting there, ordered a drink. In comes simple linear regression. Sits down. He orders an old fashioned. Because he's old fashioned. Then comes a data pipeline. The bartender asks the data pipeline, "What's this guy want?" Says, "I'll have whatever's on tap." It's a pipeline there. The let's see, the Holt Winters model walks in. The Holt Winters forecasting model walks in. If we think back to time series forecasting, bartender asks what he'll have. He's eyeballing the beers on tap. He says, "Do you have anything seasonal?" The L1 distance walks in. This is a deep one. You got to go back to the stats books here. Orders a Manhattan. L1 distance.
Oh,
it's our Manhattan distance.
I would love to hear a few more if you have.
The bartender actually is a data scientist as well. The bartender, he's worked there for a few months. He gets kind of bored making the same drinks over and over. So he actually builds an algorithm, designs an algorithm to help him, determine an optimal mix of ingredients and design the perfect drink. And so, when I heard that, I was like, yeah, got to try this. So he serves it up. It looks strange. I've never had anything like it before. I take a sip. It's really good. You built this with an algorithm? I said, yep, sure did. He said, well, how do you explain the flavor? He said, lime. Lime. It's written in all caps in the book, so it's local, interpretable, linear, local, interpretable. Whatever lime stands for, the local linear approximation. There we go.
Oh my gosh, that's fantastic.
I'm not picking out just the most corny subset.
They're all this fantastic?
They're all this corny, yes. This is a representative sample, I should say.
Okay. Oh, great. In your food and beverage section, do you have any jokes about corn?
I do not. I'm
write that one
putting
down.
it right on here next to the Dalmatian.
Okay.
Next to the Dalmatian. So I don't want to walk back from the fun any. I want this to be fun. The intent of this book, obviously it's not, it wasn't my PhD dissertation here or anything. But sort of my hope is that it is, when I was teaching, I do some teaching for clients. I do some teaching on the side. And when I'm teaching, sort of my mental map is, 90% content and learning and 10% like fun and entertainment. And I'm almost trying to just like flip the script here, where it's my focus is to try to be entertaining and enjoyable and fun. But within that, embedded in that is some learning, some ways like, okay, this is a clever way to think about data or analytics or AI. And even if there's not sort of that explicit learning, okay, great. I've learned this thing. the sort of camaraderie and sort of shared experience. And I think back to like a client that has had me come in and perform for their data science team. And, they're very deliberate about not just doing a several day training session where everybody's nose is in the most dense technical book. And, we're really going to learn how transformers work and, whether we can build a large language model in here, but we're going to become a more cohesive team, and we're going to build good bonding experiences. And you can do that with a lot of fun things, but when it's something that's shared and specific to the culture of that nerdy team, then I think that does a lot to help sort of, we are a data science team. Yes, let's tackle this. Yeah, I remember, maybe Monica and Evan work 1,000 miles apart and in different projects, but now we have this shared experience. We build sort of this team camaraderie.
That's awesome.
That's the hope, at least.
Speaking of learning, when you are approaching anything new, we talked about it a little bit previously with your problems with no solutions, but when you are learning new things, what is your go-to resource for those new things?
Okay, so I'll give my honest answer first, which is probably not helpful for anybody in your audience, unless I've got coworkers there. But I've got a great team. I work on a team with 25-ish or so folks that also like thinking about complex problems and not yet solved problems. And so when I run into something that it's challenging and I don't have good groundwork for how to think about it, I've got coworkers that I go to that tend to enjoy thinking about these things and tend to be very open to discussing, hey, I read this, but I don't know how to apply it. I don't know what to make of it. I've got a lot of great folks that are thoughtful like that.
Yeah, I think that's completely fair because you network or you're part of a community and you just bounce things off of one another. If it's a team that you're working on at work, that's that same, community where you can work together and collaborate. So yeah, I think that's really great.
Yeah. And it's, maybe it is more accessible to other people. Yeah. That maybe the network is not at their work, but if you've got some folks that you follow on, I've become more active on LinkedIn, and there's a pretty good network of folks that, if the old adage, like on Stack Overflow, if you post a question, say, I don't know what to think about this, you get no responses. If you post a question and then the wrong answer, you get a million answers of, nope, that's wrong. Here's how you should think about this. But I think like LinkedIn, where that's sort of a broader scope and there's a pretty rich like data, AI, analytics crowd on there. You say, hey, I'm thinking about this problem in this way, and here's what I'm going to approach it with. Then, ask the right people and you'll get some very thoughtful answers, at least in my experience.
Absolutely.
And those are very like non-academic. In my head, it feels like the right answer to this question is, well, I would consult one of these textbooks, and I would go and I would reference the subject matter expert, the person who wrote this algorithm, and I would apply, exactly their specifications, and I would figure out the answer. But I think my answer is really actually much more social. I would ask people to help me think about it and who would enjoy talking about it.
Yeah. Yeah. We're not about being serious here with your nourishment.
Yeah,
no.
fun. We're still in the fun. The fun thing came in, but it never went out. So we're still in the fun time.
Absolutely. We are in the overlap.
Okay, good. It all overlaps. If it's not in the fun zone, then what is it doing here?
Right? That's awesome. Well, thank you so much, Evan. Are there any final words of encouragement, recommendations, or possibly more corny jokes you can share with us?
Yeah, I think this space moves so fast, and the quicker you can come to grips with imposter syndrome and knowing that you're just not going to know even a small percentage of the things that happen in this space, the healthier that is. I don't have a huge experience, going on 6 years specifically in analytics and maybe a dozen or so in economics and finance adjacent to analytics. And as new things come out, it doesn't mean that you give up on learning. You can learn things all the time. And no matter how fast you learn and how quickly you absorb, the new stuff that comes out is growing faster than your ability to absorb it all. And so if, getting in the mindset of, well, I'm just growing ever further behind, I think is not a healthy place to be in, but being constantly, don't let it preclude you from trying to learn and being active in learning, just accepting that there is too much that you will never have a chance to learn. So just smile about it anyways. Just laugh about it. That's what I like to do.
Yeah. I mean, that's why you became a professional data comedian, right?
Yes.
Well, wonderful. Thank you so very much again, Evan, for coming on the show with us and sharing your amazing corny jokes.
Awesome. Monica, thanks so much. It has very much been in the fun zone. Thanks so much for the opportunity, for having me on.
Absolutely. And if anybody in the audience had any questions for you, where can they find and or follow you?
So I'm moderately active on LinkedIn if folks want to follow me there. I also have predictablejokes.com is a website where you can get in touch with me. You can look at some silly jokes that I like to tell there. So predictablejokes.com.
All right. Well, thanks again. And as always, folks, happy learning.